Okay guys, in this video we're going to be taking another look at XRP and be taking a look at the long-term and short-term price action of XRP. Guys, as we get into this video, if you find it useful and informative, do go ahead and hit that like button. I really appreciate it. If you're new, make sure you have subscribed, hit the bell, tap on all notifications and you won't miss another update. Right, let's get into what is going on here with XRP. And we're going to start off with talking about what is going on with the weekly chart. So here we have XRP to the USDT. We are using Binance as the data source. And on this weekly chart, we obviously have the Fibonacci retracement tool from the all-time high to the low area just down here, which would have been the crash of March 2020. This Fibonacci retracement tool with those extensions enabled gives us a bit of a view and a bit of an idea as to where things are likely to go in the second half of this year, beginning of 2022. This obviously has some interesting price expectations associated with it. And again, the first price target would be $6.14, second price target $9.88, third price target $13.62. followed by the last target of $15.93. Of course, this is only based on the previous all-time high and the low crash in March of 2020. And again, you can go ahead and place the 236 area on top of that all-time high, and that will show you different price targets all the way up to about $66 or so. But again, those are under very strict circumstances where you might see such a thing. I like to keep this into the realms of realistic where possible, unless there's new data that indicates we are going higher. So right now for me, we'll be looking up towards that kind of $13.50 area. That's a pretty good target to kind of keep in mind. Now, the other thing that we want to talk about on this weekly chart is what's been going on most recently with the price action. We can obviously see the previous few weeks here with this downtrend that's occurred. And ultimately, this downward trend has taken that stochastic relative strength index all the way from an overbought area up here of 98, all the way down to an oversold area of 1.26. This is indicating to us that there is very little more room to fall down, which means we've kind of bottomed out and we have to start pushing the price of XRP to the upside. We have to basically start moving week by week to the upside in order to correct that stochastic RSI back to out of this oversold area back up into a reasonable zone before going overbought during that parabolic stage of the bull run. So right now it seems that wave 4 has corrected. It's been pretty decent and we're in a pretty good position here. There was a little bit more room to fall. We're at 1.2. We have obviously seen it previously a little bit lower than this. We can take a look at the history here and we can see we have actually gone all the way down to 0 before. So we would be mindful that there is a little bit more room to potentially fall down to if you needed to, but it's minor at this point. We've actually had the bulk of it kind of done and we are looking to move on out of here. So this is pretty good news. It means that technically speaking, the charts are saying that there's very little more room to fall down into. If you were to fall down, we'll try to find some of those areas. Right now we're trading at 58 cents, and I think there's a couple areas that might just take this down to 0, but other than that, we should be pretty good to continue the motion to the upside, which means if you're looking to accumulate, there's going to be a few areas right now to potentially buy. Otherwise, dollar cost average is always your friend during the next few weeks as we start to enter the next cycle, or at least the next wave, I should say. Okay, so that is your weekly chart. It's always good to understand what's going on there from a weekly point of view. When we actually drop over into our daily view, here we can also see that stochastic RSI has already reached 0 on the blue line and is at 4.4 on the orange line. So again, we have a little bit more room to potentially fall down into, which will be made possible from the hourly chart. We'll get into that in a moment. I think 50 cent is probably the bottom area that we're looking at. 51, maybe 52 cent in that area seems like a pretty sensible support line for us for XRP. So obviously on this chart, we are just below our support line. I'll make this a little bit bigger so you guys can see. So ultimately, our support line is, or a resistance line right now, is at 64.8. We are looking to push that back up there, but I think we're first of all going to pull back a little bit to about 52 cents before pushing back up towards those 60 levels. And during this, obviously, we'll take this daily stochastic RSI from 0 all the way back up into this overbought area in the same way that we were down here. We actually were a little bit higher. We were at about 6 on the chart at this point over here, and obviously we took it up a reasonable amount. We took it from 50 cent up to 73 cent in one motion of this stochastic RSI on the daily chart. It obviously took a bit of time to do that, but obviously, if I grab my measure here, we can grab that. We just onto there and to about there. So it was about 7 days. It took about a week, and we saw 45%. Okay, and so again, those expectations, if we were to say it was going to take a week from, let's say, probably Monday, we'll be safe about it, and then we were to go up to about 45%. In 7 days, it's probably going to take us to about 80 or so cents, something like that. But of course, there is major resistance up here, and this is going to be critical, because if we are able to get past 75.5 as the major resistance, we could turn that into a good support line for XRP, and we could start continuing the journey to the upside. Obviously, the weekly stochastic RSI is indicating that we do need to move to the upside. So once we have this last little pullback, I think we'll be all good to keep going there. Okay, so obviously we have that stochastic RSI on the weekly and on the daily working for us. They're telling us that everything has bottomed out. Of course, when we actually go down to that next level and we take a look at the hourly view, that actually shows us a slightly different pattern, right? It shows us that we are not overbought. We're actually heading to oversold. Sorry, we're not oversold, but we're actually heading to overbought, right? And what we can see here is basically how we are moving our stochastic RSI to the upside. Now, obviously, the hourly is a lot more volatile than that of the daily or even the weekly. So it's always good if you're looking at the bigger picture and thinking long term where things are going, as most of the XRP army will, then ultimately you'll be thinking to yourselves, this is fantastic news, because the long-term picture is that we are moving up. Obviously, there's some short-term downfalls that we have to obviously acknowledge. Things do not move in straight lines in the crypto space. They move in waves. Ultimately, there's many waves in many different time frames. So obviously, when I've been talking about my 5 waves to the upside, the Elliott theory, on many of these projects that we talk about at Cheeky Crypto, we are usually talking about the daily or the weekly chart. Obviously, if you drill down into many of these lower time frames, there's waves within waves within waves. So it's always important that we acknowledge that ultimately the hourly chart is going to be moving in waves, be that ABCs or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. So what we want to acknowledge here is obviously that we are looking to pull back because we need to correct our stochastic RSI from an overbought area and bring it back down into an oversold area. Obviously, this is something that happens repetitively during the course of a day, and potentially several days in a run can see us move this stochastic RSI in many different directions all over the place. So what we're looking for here is to find good support, and as we said before, we said there's a good support line on that daily chart indicating to us at about I said 52 cents. So there's always that possibility of just pulling back down a little bit in line with what we've seen prior. So if we take a look at what was going on over here and we take a look at where we're likely to go down to, there's a good support line just around here, anywhere in this kind of zone, right? So this seems to be a pretty sensible area that we should be expecting a pullback down into. So as we were looking at other charts today, Bitcoin looks like it's going to have a correction. We have Cardano looking like it's going to have a correction. Harmony is looking to have a correction. VeChain is looking to have a correction. All of these other altcoins are looking to pull back. This is just normal technical stuff. And here XRP is no different. However, it's obviously got, it's in a different position, right? It's not overbought just yet. This means that we will probably push up a little bit further before pulling back, or we'll pull back and actually find support sooner than some of these other altcoins. So XRP is in a pretty good position here to say that this last little accumulation point before we actually start to push the price back up. So right now we are looking at like there's areas between 51, I think it was, 51 to 53 cents seems to be a pretty good area for a bouncing to occur. So on this hourly chart, we're mindful that our stochastic relative strength index is in a different position to that of the weekly and the hourly. Now, I'm going to take that stochastic off and we are going to throw in our relative strength index. This is going to show us a different picture. Again, I'm just going to change the colors on this to make it a little bit more visible so you guys can get a clear view of what's going on on this on the hourly chart here from the relative strength index versus the stochastic relative strength index. Now, obviously the stochastic is more sensitive to price movements and is really beneficial when you're trading sideways. So it gives you a bit more of an accurate picture of why you're having a pullback. Right now, this relative strength index, which works best during trends, actually shows us that we are at a pretty reasonable level of 42. So a pullback here could actually actually go ahead and set us down to these lower areas. Again, this would be fantastically in line with our expectations of the weekly and the hourly chart, in line with our our daily chart, our weekly chart, in line with our hourly chart. So ultimately what we're looking for is to basically have this correction down to this lower area of 51 to 53 cent, that kind of area just down here. This would actually correct our relative strength index, correct our stochastic relative strength index, and then everything aligns perfectly, our weekly, our daily and our hourly views, and therefore we should start to see a pretty significant push to price next week or the week after. Ultimately, this correction, this sideways trade that we have been seeing, is something that I can see kind of playing out and coming to an end towards the end of July, beginning of August, as we start to enter that fifth wave to the upside. Now, what I'm going to do is go back up into our daily view and just talk about what those expectations are. Up here, we actually placed this yellow box. This yellow box is the area that we want to see a closed candle above. This area, it encompasses the 618, the 702, and the 786 of the Fibonacci retracement tool. So getting a closed candle above this area is absolutely critical when we start talking about that fifth wave and going into those extra high prices for XRP. So right now, obviously, we are addressing that we want to achieve a closed candle, preferably weekly, above this box here. But to get there, we have to acknowledge that 75.5 cent is going to be a major resistance, as is $1.07. Once this is done, though, we have got that next target. The next target is actually $2.87, and this target is just short of the all-time high of $3.84. This target is in line with the Fibonacci retracement tool and is in fact the 1.618 area of that extension level. So right now, obviously getting that closed candle above here seems to be a bit of a milestone, but I think that in the next couple of weeks or so, we should be looking to close above 75.5 cent. And in doing so, we'll start correcting the stochastic relative strength index and these relative strength index on the weekly and on the daily, as well as obviously the hourly. The weekly chart is the one that's most interesting because as we talk about long term, when we think about the second half of this year, we are talking about XRP slowly correcting that stochastic relative strength index on that weekly chart, which, as you can see, is at rock bottom right now and has a pretty decent journey ahead of it, pushing the price of XRP to the upside. Now, in order to do this, we obviously have to make sure that the fear in the space is obviously corrected. Right now, we are indicating extreme fear from a general point of view. It's always good to couple this with the artificial intelligence of 𝗕𝗢𝗠𝗪. So here we have that AI, and it is in line with, unfortunately, that generalized fear and greed index, extreme fear for XRP. With this being said, though, some fantastic news has come out regarding the lawsuit with the SEC, and obviously Judge 値byrne, ordering that deposition. So that's going to be fantastic news. I think that's going to really help bring a close to what's going on there between the SEC and Ripple. And as a result, I think the price of XRP is going to reflect this in the coming weeks and months. Guys, hopefully you have found this brief update on XRP useful and informative. If you have, hit that like button. I really do appreciate it. If you're new, make sure you subscribe, hit the bell, tap on all notifications, and you won't miss a single video. Guys, with this said, done, and out of the way, I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.